You're freaking out, but you had no problem with the facts alleged in here. It's pretty awful. It's only probable cause. It's not the trial.
A psychologist breaks down in court as she hears the grave charges against her. Authorities in Florida accuse her of befriending a teenage girl at a hotel pool, only to allegedly take her to a hotel room to be assaulted. We're taking a closer look at her arrest affidavit and appearance in court with trial attorney Jennifer El-Kadi. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We really appreciate you guys sticking with us as we cover these really, really tough stories. And one of the ways that we want to say thank you is by telling you about this really cool sponsor of ours. It's called Upside, and it's actually a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas and groceries. So for instance, when I pump my gas, if I use Upside, I can get cash back when I fill up my tank. This is real cash back. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you can transfer straight into your bank account. So once you have the Upside app, you claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside at tons of places like 7-Eleven, Exxon, Taco Bell. You pay as usual using a debit or credit card. You follow the steps on the app and you get paid. So to find out how much you can earn, you can click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen and use our promo code SIDEBAR and you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Again, really appreciate Upside as a sponsor and for you guys for watching. A really alarming story out of Miami for you today. 45-year-old Maria Ximena Duarte is facing charges of lewd and lascivious behavior with a minor, as well as human trafficking. Yeah, she was arrested Saturday in Miami. Her mugshot shows her very red-faced and crying. Why? Because she is accused of befriending a 15-year-old girl who was out reportedly walking her dog by the pool of a hotel, offering her marijuana and alcohol, before eventually convincing her to go to a hotel room where she was allegedly assaulted. Very, very serious allegations here. And Duarte appeared before Miami-Dade Judge Mindy Glazer to find out about bond and became visibly distraught during the hearing. You see, while the judge reads out the charges against her, Duarte repeatedly seems to try to interrupt, but she's muted.
Ms. Duarte is present.
Duarte, you were arrested for 1 count of human trafficking, 1 count of lewd and lascivious exhibition on a child, 1 count of lewd and lascivious battery, and one count of interference with custody. So I will appoint the public defender's office for you. So I'm ordering that you stay away from the 15-year-old child whose initials are BP. No contact with that alleged victim, either directly, indirectly, in person, in writing, by telephone, or through third parties, and no contact with the victim through social media or other electronic means. You must stay at least 500 feet away from the victim, her home, school, and any place of employment. Do you understand the stay away order?
Yeah, she doesn't.
I had a chance to review the arrest affidavit. I think there's probable cause for everything.
And Duarte appears to start crying, putting her face in her hands as the judge reveals that the most serious charge against her, the human trafficking, means she'll automatically have no bond.
Since count 1, human trafficking of a child, is considered a dangerous crime, it's no bond. You're going to have to wait until tomorrow to see a judge. That judge will set a final hearing on the state's motion for pretrial detention. Any further questions you can address with your public defender.
The other counts, Judge?
The other counts, count 1 is no bond. Count 2 is a second-degree felony. It's $7,500. Count 3 is a second-degree felony, $7,500. And count 4, interference with custody, is $2,500. Good days, ma'am.
Yeah, you can see her getting very emotional there. And at this point, the judge tries to move on to the next appearance, different case, but Duarte still seems to be agitated.
Page 2, Christian Perpal.
Judge, on Ms. Duarte.
Yeah.
Ms. Duarte indicates she has a private attorney. What's her name again?
Janet Valdez Darnell.
Janet
No one got me.
Valdez Darnell.
She's not here. You want me to reset the case for tomorrow? Call your lawyer, tell her to go to court tomorrow, and you have the hearing before the division judge on the state's. Miss Corey, if you're not her lawyer, why are you turning it off? She's saying she's a.
Judge, because she can't hear anything you're saying if she's talking at the same time. She's going to cut off everything, and she needs to listen to what you're saying.
I can hear.
Ma'am, have you hired a private lawyer? Can you afford to hire a private lawyer?
Can I speak?
Can you afford to hire a private attorney?
She's my best friend. She would do it pro bono.
Okay, let her.
She's a gator.
You need a lawyer on
I'm
this.
a psychologist. I'm a PhD. I will lose my license and my life. I need help. I've never even touched that girl, kissed her.
The facts alleged in here are terrible facts. You're facing, was it a life felony for the it's a first-degree felony, the human trafficking. You need an attorney. I'm appointing the public defender's office. If you want your friend to come on pro bono, she can at a later date. You'll see your judge tomorrow. You're freaking out, but you had no problem with the facts alleged in here. It's pretty awful. It's only probable cause. It's not the trial.
Yeah, this is not the time to defend yourself or make kind of these arguments. And Duarte, she's muted again, continues to argue with the public defender and a deputy before she's led away. And you heard there that Duarte says she's a psychologist and she could lose her license to practice medicine because of all of this. So we checked the Florida Department of Health's records, and it shows that Duarte's psychologist license is being clear and inactive. And it's our understanding that means that she has a license, but she's not authorized to practice in Florida. She also appears to have an active mental health counselor license and a registered mental health counselor intern license. That's expired. Now, we didn't find any disciplinary action associated with her licenses, but of course, that could potentially change as Duarte faces very serious charges. And it appears that Duarte's previous encounters with police have all been traffic related. We typed in Duarte's name and state of residence on Truthfinder, and in less than a minute, our paid subscription gave us access to court records. Yeah, so Law&Crime, we partner with Truthfinder. We use it to get details on people involved in our stories. But by the way, even if you don't work in true crime, it can be an excellent resource to give you some peace of mind. It's one of the largest public records search services in the United States. And with a paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And by the way, right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC Sidebar. Okay, I want to get back into this. So I want to dig into Duarte's arrest affidavit. And to do that, I want to bring in trial attorney Jennifer El-Kadi, who has experience in the human trafficking field. Jenny, so good to see you. First off, what do you make of this case, and what do you make of Duarte's reaction in court in that initial appearance?
I think the initial reaction that I have with this case in general right now is, honestly, this is a lot more common than I think a lot of people realize. I think with human trafficking, people associate traffickers to be male, but actually the pimps work together with other women, and that is very common. So I know that the report also said that a man named Jason was her boyfriend. They could have been working together on this trafficking scheme or trafficking ring. Her appearance in court was, I think the judge said it right, that the facts alleged in the case, she had no problem with the things that she had done, but she is very much reacting to the charges that she has now because she got caught. And I think that's just very tragic to see that somebody who was trafficking a minor is upset at the fact that they're going to prison for something like this, which is, I guess it's terrifying to go to prison, but don't traffic individuals.
Well, and look, these are allegations, right? She hasn't been found guilty yet. They are very serious allegations. And I want to take a closer look at this, and more specifically, what police in Miami say happened at this Aloft Hotel. So let's lay this out, Jenny. The 15-year-old victim allegedly told police last Thursday about an assault that happened just a couple of days before. So when you talk about a witness, really recent event, recollection very fresh. The arrest affidavit says, quote, "The victim walked her dog into the pool area of the incident location where she met the defendant. The defendant befriended the victim, quickly gaining her trust by advising that she was a psychologist. The victim grew comfortable with the defendant and confided in her about issues in her personal life and was told that they had shared life experiences. During the conversation, the defendant offered the victim a marijuana cigarette to smoke. The defendant also bought alcoholic beverages from the hotel's bar and offered them to the victim, but the victim declined drinking the alcohol. During the conversation, the defendant told the victim to come back to her hotel room later that night. Following the conversation, the victim took her dog home and returned to the Aloft Hotel, where the defendant would again provide her with marijuana. Now, Jenny, from a defense point of view, is there any argument any argument they can make, hey, this 15-year-old came back to the hotel, it was her own volition to do this, or does that not matter?
Well, the problem is, it's not a problem. The reason that the law protects minors under the age of 18 is considered a minor is that minors are considered vulnerable. There's the argument that, at the age of 18, that's when their brain fully develops. And so the law does protect minors. So it's a very difficult argument to make.
And if she has this mental health training, right, and this level of manipulation, that could hurt her as well. I think that's one of the parts about this is disturbing, but also something that gives the prosecution a lot of room for too.
Absolutely. And I mean, you had mentioned too that she has an inactive license, but she does still have that institutional knowledge and that skill set to be able to psychologically manipulate these individuals. And specifically, again, minors. It's very, very tragic to see that.
Okay, so now it gets worse. I'm not going to lie to anybody, it gets worse because according to a timeline provided by police, the victim leaves the defendant's hotel room at around 6 a.m. the next morning, and then left and came back several times the next day. And she told police she met two different men who came to Duarte's room, identified only as Pablo and the man that you mentioned, Jason. The affidavit states, quote, the defendant on Wednesday, August 14, 2024, began to take pictures of the victim and send them to Pablo and advised that the victim was 21 years old and willing to have sex with him. The victim told the defendant she was not like that and did not want to engage in sex. The defendant would ignore the victim and continue to insist. Shortly after, Pablo would arrive to the defendant's hotel room where the defendant would have sex with Pablo in front of the victim. Jason, who the victim knows as the defendant's boyfriend, arrived and entered the hotel room. The defendant began to exit the room in an attempt to leave the victim in the room alone with Jason. The victim advised the defendant that she felt uncomfortable being in the room alone with Jason. The defendant then pushed the victim back inside of the room, told her to stay and make Jason feel good, and closed the hotel as she exited. Then the victim says that she went to the bathroom to try to play on her phone, but eventually came back out, and she says when she did that, according to her, Jason was exposing himself and then forced her to perform a sex act on him. Jenny, these feel like concrete allegations or very, systematic allegations of sex trafficking here, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is very, very typical signs of human trafficking. She took her to a hotel, which 87% of human trafficking occurs in hotels. She started taking pictures of the individual to post advertisements to sell the minor for sex. She brought a man to the room, and individuals were coming in and out to be able to almost have a clandestine crime occurring. So this is a very systematic and typical sign of human trafficking.
Now, according to this victim, Duarte would exchange sex for drugs to satisfy this addiction. She reportedly offered the victim marijuana repeatedly to get her to come back to the hotel. And the affidavit states, quote, the defendant has knowledge that the victim is a minor. The victim overheard the defendant state to Jason, she's 15. Can you believe that? So if we're talking about a knowledge component, there you go, very serious point of evidence there. Goes on to state, quote, in her statement to law enforcement, the victim described the defendant by first, middle, and last name, age, and provided photographs and video of the defendant. The victim's mother spoke with law enforcement officers and stated that she did not consent to the victim going to the defendant's hotel room. Now, Miami police say they went to make contact with Duarte on an unrelated matter and took her to the Miami-Dade Police Department for an interview. And, quote, upon arrival, this detective observed the defendant acting belligerent and being uncooperative. The defendant appeared to be under the influence of unknown narcotics. Therefore, this detective determined the interview could not be conducted. Judge Glazer found probable cause to charge Duarte with human trafficking, lewd and lascivious exhibition on a child under 16, lewd and lascivious battery, and interference with custody. So Jenny, the fact, I mean, there's so many different factors to this, but what stands out to you as the strongest piece of evidence? Is it unfortunately going to be the testimony, the account of this young girl?
Absolutely. I think the testimony is going to be a big one. Honestly, the photographs of the advertisements, I think, would be another one. I mean, also to the fact that the victim is a minor is a big, big piece as well in order to help the prosecution here. But I think the testimony and probably the advertisements would be the two biggest pieces of evidence. And if there were any witnesses at the pool.
And any communication, right? The communications between her and these
Correct.
other individuals and the taking of the photographs too. Any possible defense here for her? I mean, it's still early. We don't have all the facts. We don't have all the details. You haven't seen the evidence, but what are typical defenses in these kinds of cases?
So specifically for her, what the defense could be is that she was forced to do this by Jason. Typically what happens in typical sex trafficking cases, what you have is something known as the bottom. And that is a woman who is being forced by the main head pimp to recruit other individuals to be trafficked for the Johns. So that could be the defense, that she was forced. What would still happen, though, is it would just be a lesser crime. It's not that she would get out of this at all.
Or some sort of plea deal would be worked out.
Correct.
Right. But I can't imagine any situation, either if she takes a deal or goes to trial and is convicted, that she doesn't see the inside of a prison cell.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
By the way, I have to say, going back to the fact that she was apparently on narcotics and they couldn't conduct an interview, one of the key areas of any defense attorney is, were her rights violated? Did she say things that she shouldn't have said because she was pressured by law enforcement? But not here, right? If they realized that she wasn't that she wasn't in the proper state of mind, they knew not to conduct an interview because that could have actually backfired, right?
Absolutely. I think they were very, very knowledgeable with being able to recognize that as well. And they did nothing wrong in this situation. Everything that coincided after this was done properly. So it's going to be a really hard case for the defense.
And by the way, she can't use their narcotic defense, right? I mean, if she's voluntarily ingesting drugs, that can't be used in any sort of way to mitigate the circumstances here.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay. I want to end on this point. There's something else that's interesting to note. So we didn't find any disciplinary action that was associated with Duarte's psychology licenses. We did find, though, an order from the Florida Education Practices Commission from back in 2006 that denied her application for a teaching certificate. So in a letter included in that order, the commission states, quote, "As you know, the teacher panel of the Education Practices Commission reviewed the matter pending against you. Based upon the panel's consideration of this matter and upon the panel's acceptance of your settlement agreement, you are hereby reprimanded. This panel, composed of your peers, believes that as a teacher, you're required to exercise a measure of leadership beyond reproach. By your actions, you have lessened the reputation of all who practiced our profession. The profession cannot condone your actions, nor can the public who employ us." And in the document's notice of reasons, it reads, quote, "On or about February 11th, 2002, applicant attempted to leave a department store without paying for approximately $110 worth of merchandise in her possession. Applicant was arrested and charged with petty theft. On or about August 27, 2002, applicant pled nolo contendere to the charge and the court withheld adjudication of guilt." So Jenny, I don't know if that's going to play into any kind of criminal trial. I don't know if that evidence would actually be relevant, maybe. But I just think that adds a different element to this story, a more sinister element of this story when you look at her background, her qualifications. And if you take the allegations as true, that she was in a position of trust and maybe abused that position, again, to get what she wanted here. That's the allegations. But what do you make of those, that her past history?
I think what's interesting is that it was a theft charge too, which is a crime of dishonesty. And in a criminal case that could come in. I think the more powerful issue here is that she was she is a psychologist, even though she's inactive. She does have that ability to mentally manipulate somebody. And it's apparent too in human trafficking that you go after individuals that are vulnerable. She recognized that this minor was vulnerable, and she preyed on her. And that is something that is very common. And having that heightened level of skill set to be able to know how to manipulate is just going to be very, very difficult for defense. But the theft crime could come in as a crime of dishonesty. So
if she
it could
takes
be
a
used
stand,
to her
if she
favor.
takes a stand, right?
Exactly.
Right. She can be cross-examined about that. Right now, the Miami-Dade County court website still shows a public defender assigned to Duarte's case. She's expected back in court later this week for a new pretrial detention hearing, and her arraignment is scheduled for September 9th. Jenny El-Kadi, great to see you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Jesse.
So after we did our interview with Jenny, we got some news. Police announced that they have arrested that apparent Jason, this boyfriend of Duarte that we spoke of, 46-year-old Jason Mojica. He was already in custody at the Turner Guilford Night Correctional Center on a different case, but now he's been arrested on a slew of new charges. Charges of sexual battery of a victim that was 12 to 17 years old, lewd and lascivious battery, and interference with custody. We'll, of course, continue to follow this case and see what happens next. All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.